The super empath who walked away but stayed in the avoidance mind. Some people leave without making a sound, yet they echo in your mind for years. They're the ones who felt everything for you but didn't need to stay. They're the super empaths, the rare souls who love deeply but walk away with dignity. And if you're sitting there thinking you've lost them, what you don't realize is that they never truly leave. Not in your thoughts, not in your heart. Begin by painting the picture of an intense emotional connection that leaves a lasting mark. Highlight the tension between deep empathy and emotional self-preservation. Imagine meeting someone who feels your emotions as intensely as you feel theirs. Someone who could read your soul better than anyone else, yet chooses to protect their own heart. This is the story of the super empath, the one who walks away but imprints themselves forever. Some people have a presence that feels electric, not because they speak loudly or demand attention, but because they simply see. They see the small things, the invisible threads that connect one purse. On to another, the subtle shifts in mood, the tension behind a forced smile, the excitement behind a quiet laugh. A super empath doesn't just notice these things, they absorb them. They feel them in a way that can be almost overwhelming, a constant tuning into the emotional wavelength of those around them. To be around them is to feel known, truly known, as if someone has read every unspoken chapter of your life and held it gently, without judgment. This ability to sense what's beneath the surface is not taught, it's innate, it's a gift and a burden wrapped into one, because to carry the weight of other people's emotions requires strength most people never need to summon. It isn't just that they notice, it's that they remember. They notice the things that slip through cracks, unnoticed by everyone else. The way you hesitate before answering a question, the exact tone you use when speaking about something you love, the tiny flicker of fear behind your confident exterior. They remember the little patterns, the small habits, the fleeting gestures, because to them, these are the signs of who you truly are. A super empath's perception isn't casual. It's detailed, nuanced, precise. They can tell when you're holding back, even when you don't realize it yourself. And what makes this even more powerful is that it's paired with understanding, not criticism. They don't just see what you're hiding, they understand why you're hiding it. They feel the logic of your fear, the reasoning behind your walls, the history that shaped you into the person you are. Being around a super empath can be disarming. It can be unsettling because they reflect your own emotions back to you with a clarity that's hard to ignore. When you're vulnerable with them, they mirror your feelings in a way that validates them, yet never manipulates them. They don't exploit your openness, they honor it. That's why relationships with super empaths, platonic, romantic, or otherwise, leave a mark. They have a way of maki. You feel seen in a world that rarely bothers to notice. It's not about flattery or charm. It's about the rare human experience of feeling fully understood, like someone has touched the parts of you that even you struggle to articulate. But this ability comes with an emotional cost because they are so tuned in, they feel everything with intensity, often more acutely than the people around them. Joy becomes elation, sadness becomes heartbreak, anxiety becomes suffocating pressure. They live in a world of emotional extremes where absorbing the unspoken pain, frustration, and longing of others is part of daily life. And yet, despite the potential for overwhelm, they navigate it with a quiet wisdom. They learn to balance their sensitivity with discernment, choosing carefully whom to invest their energy in, knowing that not every emotion they encounter is theirs to carry. This is why they are magnetic yet elusive, grounding yet untouchable, because they know the power of their presence and the fragility of their own heart. To be loved by a super empath is to be known in a way that feels sacred. It is to be understood without explanation, to have your emotions mirrored and respected. Experience a connection that is both grounding and transformative. Their perception cuts through pretense, social masks, and casual defenses, reaching straight into the essence of who you are. And that, perhaps more than anything, is why their presence lingers long after they leave. Walking away is one of the hardest things a super empath can do, not because they don't care, but precisely because they care too much. They feel every nuance of connection, every unspoken need, every flicker of hope, and yet they know that sometimes the bravest act of love is not to stay. They know that love alone is not enough when it comes to protecting their own emotional well-being. Leaving doesn't mean failure or lack of affection. It means self-respect, wisdom, and a deep understanding of the boundaries that keep them whole. To watch them leave is to feel the weight of all the care they carried silently, the unspoken devotion that never got noticed in the way it should have. It is to realize that someone could love you more than anyone else and still walk away, because the right way to love yourself sometimes requires leaving. It takes immense courage to walk away when everything inside you want to stay, when your heart is invested, when your instincts scream that you could fix, heal, or endure. A super empath feels deeply, but they also see clearly. They see the patterns that don't serve them, the cycles of misunderstanding, the moments when connection turns into exhaustion, when giving becomes draining. They understand that love without reciprocity, respect, or balance can slowly erode the soul. And so they make the choice not out of anger or bitterness, but out of wisdom. They leave with intention, with clarity, and with a quiet strength that doesn't need validation. Their departure is not a retreat. It is an act of preservation, a statement that their heart is valuable and they will not allow it to be diminished. To an observer, it might seem like walking away is weakness, abandoning someone who still needs you. But for a super empath, it is the opposite. It is the ultimate act of power. It requires listening to your inner voice, trusting your intuition, and acknowledging that staying in a situation that diminishes you is far more damaging than the pain of leaving. It is knowing that true love doesn't cling. True love doesn't suffocate. True love sometimes looks like letting go, giving space, and walking away while leaving the door open for growth and understanding. It is the paradox of strength wrapped in softness, of care balanced with boundaries. And yet, leaving is never easy emotionally. Every step away carries the weight of memories, the pull of attachment, and the ache of what could have been. Super empaths leave with a mix of heartbreak and hope, aware that their absence will echo in the other person's mind. They understand that some people will never grasp the magnitude of what was lost until it is gone. They anticipate the regret, the reflection, the questions that will arise when their presence is no longer immediately accessible. But they also accept this because their priority is not to be understood in the moment. They are protecting the integrity of their heart for a lifetime. This act of leaving is transformative not only for the empath, but for the person who remains. By walking away, they teach lessons that words could never convey: the importance of self-respect, the value of emotional reciprocity, and the undeniable truth that love is not ownership. They reveal, through their absence, that connection cannot thrive on imber. Lance, that intimacy without awareness is unsustainable, and that some bonds are meant to linger only in memory and impact rather than in constant presence. When a super empath walks away, they carry themselves with quiet dignity. There is no drama, no vengeful intention, no desperate attempt to be remembered. Their power is subtle yet absolute. They leave because they love not only the other person, but also themselves. And in doing so, they demonstrate a level of emotional intelligence, strength, and courage that few can match. Walking away is not surrender. It is mastery of self, the ability to recognize that your heart deserves protection, and the wisdom to preserve your essence even when love feels like it might demand sacrifice. For someone who has an avoidant nature, the absence of a super empath is not just a missing person. It is an invisible storm that churns quietly but relentlessly in their mind. Avoidants are often seen as detached or unbothered, but the truth is far more complex. Beneath the calm, the nonchalance, and the walls they build lies a mind constantly replaying the echoes of connection, analyzing every interaction, every word, every subtle gesture. When a super empath walks away, they leave an indelible imprint that the avoidant cannot ignore. The empath's intensity, their clarity, their capacity to feel deeply creates a mirror in which the avoidant is forced to confront the emotions they habitually suppress. It starts subtly, almost imperceptibly. A phrase they said, a look they gave, the way they leaned in when the avoidant tried to distance themselves. These details begin to repeat in quiet moments. Sitting alone, driving, scrolling through life, the avoidant finds the empath returning in fragments, a laugh, a smile, the way their presence seemed to illuminate the room. And with each memory, a tension grows. The avoidant may not want to admit it. They may label it as nostalgia, loneliness, or even irritation. But beneath the surface, they are grappling with feelings they are ill-equipped to process. They were accustomed to holding emotions at arm's length. Yet this empath has bypassed all defenses, leaving traces that penetrate deeper than they ever intended. The avoidant struggles because their mind becomes a battleground of contradiction. On one side is the instinct to retreat, to protect themselves from vulnerability, to cling to familiar safety of detachment. On the other side is the undeniable pull of the super empath, the memory of someone who truly saw them, who understood without needing explanation, who made them feel without demanding. This internal conflict is exhausting, disorienting, and sometimes terrifying. They begin to question their own patterns, their habitual defenses, their reluctance to connect. They feel drawn toward the very presence they pushed away, even as they resist it. And this tension often manifests as overthinking, restlessness, or a quiet, gnawing ache they cannot name. The empath's absence becomes a mirror reflecting the avoidant's own emotional gaps. They are forced to confront the intimacy they ran from, the moments they failed to meet someone halfway, and the depth of connection they secretly crave but cannot fully embrace. The avoidant may convince themselves that they are indifferent, that life continues without consequence. But the truth is that the super empath lingers in ways the avoidant cannot control. Their mind replays conversations, rewinds gestures, and analyzes silences as if trying to decode a puzzle they cannot solve. They experience what it feels like to be profoundly understood and simultaneously painfully distanced, a paradox that leaves an indelible imprint on their psyche. This silent struggle is invisible to the outside world. Friends, colleagues, even the super empath themselves may never witness the turmoil unfolding behind the avoidant's composed exterior. Yet it is real, intense, and transformative. The absence of the empath becomes a kind of emotional gravity, pulling the avoidant into reflection, forcing self-awareness, and confronting truths they usually sidestep. Even if they never reach the point of reconciliation or reunion, the empath's departure leaves them changed. They are haunted not by regret alone, but by the realization of what true connection looks like and how fleetingly it touched their life. Over time, the avoidant begins to recognize the power of what they lost. They notice the contrast between superficial interactions and the depth the empath brought. They may feel guilt, longing, or a quiet admiration for the courage it took for someone to care so deeply while still protecting themselves. The super empath, even in absence, has become a teacher through presence and departure alike, revealing what love looks like when it is real, honest, and unbound by fear. And while the avoidant may continue to resist vulnerability, the imprint of the empath remains, quietly reshaping how they perceive intimacy, attachment, and emotional depth. Even when a super empath walks away, their impact doesn't vanish. The lessons they leave behind are subtle, quiet, and enduring, woven into the very way people see themselves and others. They don't lecture, demand, or preach. They teach through example, through presence, and through the integrity with which they navigate life and relationships. Their departure is not just an absence, it's a kind of gift, a silent instruction that lingers, challenging people to grow, reflect, and confront truths they might otherwise avoid. These lessons are invisible, yet potent, shaping choices, behaviors, and even the capacity to love in ways that are often only recognized long after the empath is gone. The first lesson is the value of emotional honesty. Super empaths live with an openness that is rare, choosing to acknowledge feelings rather than hide from them. They demonstrate that vulnerability is not weakness, but a form of strength. Their clarity in expressing what they feel, their courage to address discomfort, and their willingness to communicate without expectation create a template for how deep emotional engagement can work. Even when they leave, this standard remains, challenging those left behind to confront their own capacity for honesty, both with themselves and with others. They reveal silently that relationships cannot thrive on avoidance or pretense. That emotional truth is a foundation. No connection can flourish without. Another lesson is the power of boundaries. Super empaths feel intensely, yet they understand that caring too much without limits can be destructive. By walking away when necessary, they teach that self-respect is not selfish and that protecting one's own energy is a form of love. People who experience their departure often find themselves reflecting on the boundaries they tolerate in their own lives, recognizing where they have allowed overreach, compromise, or imbalance to take root. The empath's choice to leave illustrates that boundaries are not just rules or restrictions, but declarations of worth, and a guide for how to engage with others in ways that honor both parties. They also leave behind a lesson in the value of presence. A super empath's engagement is deliberate, attentive, and deeply felt. Even brief interactions are meaningful because they are infused with awareness and care. They show that to be present is to truly see someone, to understand without needing to change them, and to hold space for another person's experiences without judgment. When they are gone, those left behind are often strewn. By the contrast between being noticed and being overlooked, this awareness fosters a subtle but profound shift, nudging people toward a higher standard of empathy and attentiveness in their own relationships. The empath's departure can also teach resilience and self-reflection. Their absence exposes gaps, patterns, and vulnerabilities in ways that presence alone cannot. Without the super empath, constant reflection of one's emotions, individuals are forced to confront themselves, to wrestle with discomfort, and to grow independently. It is through this process that the lessons become internalized, not imposed, but discovered. The avoidance of easy answers, the challenge of introspection, and the pressure of missing someone who truly understood them encourages emotional maturation and deeper self-awareness. Finally, super empaths leave a lesson in the paradox of love and detachment. They demonstrate that connection does not always require possession, that care does not always demand constant proximity, and that leaving can sometimes be the most loving act of all. In this way, their influence lingers as a guide for navigating the complexities of relationships, to love fully, to nor one's own needs, and to recognize that some of the most important teachings come not from words, but from presence, absence, and the spaces in between. Even in absence, a super empath's presence can feel more alive than anyone physically around. There is a paradox in their departure. They leave, yet they remain not in sight, but in thought, in feeling, in memory. Their influence is like a general gravity pulling at the heart and mind long after they've gone. For the avoidant, this can be disorienting, even unsettling. They are used to detachment, to control, to a certain emotional distance that shields them from discomfort. Yet the super empath bypasses all defenses, leaving a resonance that cannot be ignored. Every memory, every shared glance, every unspoken moment becomes a quiet replaying again and again, reminding the avoidant of a depth of connection they rarely encounter. This lingering presence is not manipulation or intention. It is simply the consequence of someone who loved fully and sincerely. A super empath's emotions are not shallow and their understanding is not conditional. They engage wholly, and even when they leave, the energy they poured into the relationship does not vanish. It resides in the other person's consciousness, subtly reshaping their perception of love, intimacy, and connection. The avoidant may resist it, push it aside, or even deny its existence, but the truth remains. The empath's impact is indelible. They have created a space inside the mind of the other that cannot be emptied. A quiet imprint that lingers like a melody one can. Stop humming. This presence in absence also has a way of fostering introspection. The avoidant is forced to confront their own patterns, to recognize the ways they avoid vulnerability, and to examine the consequences of emotional withdrawal. Because the super empath left with dignity and intention, there is no blame, no guilt imposed. They simply disappear while leaving a mirror behind. That mirror reflects both what was shared and what was missed, what was honored and what was neglected. In this way, absence becomes education, loss becomes insight. The avoidant begins to see themselves more clearly, not because anyone told them to, but because the empath's impact continues to echo in their consciousness. Another dimension of this lingering influence is the subtle but undeniable reminder of emotional richness. The avoidant, who may be accustomed to keeping things superficial or guarded, is repeatedly reminded that life and relationships can contain depth, vulnerability, and authenticity. They may catch themselves thinking about a kindness once given, a conversation once had, or a gesture once shared, and in those moments, they are reminded of the power of empathy and genuine connection. The super empath, even in absence, elevates their understanding of what love can feel like, what intimacy can mean, and what it is to be truly seen. And this influence is not limited to longing or regret. It also inspires change. The avoidant, confronted by the memory of someone who could love so deeply and still respect themselves enough to walk away, begins to reassess their own emotional habits. They notice patterns they want to change, ways they want to grow, and behaviors they might no longer tolerate in themselves or others. The empath's departure, paradoxically, can create an emotion, awakening, a realization that depth and vulnerability are not weaknesses, and that connection is not something to fear, but something to cultivate carefully. Ultimately, the super empath's presence in absence is a testament to the power of authentic, conscious love. They leave a mark that is impossible to erase because they engaged fully, understood deeply, and loved intentionally. Even when the why are no longer physically present, their energy remains woven into the fabric of the other person's mind and heart. A quiet but persistent reminder of what it means to feel fully, to care deeply, and to love without compromise. Their absence is not emptiness. It is a lingering presence, a lasting influence, a paradoxical gift that continues to shape thought, reflection, and growth long after the last goodbye. As we reach the end of this journey together, I want you to take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of the super empath, the one who feels everything, loves intensely, and yet knows when to walk away. They teach us that true strength is not measured by how long we stay in someone else's life, but by how fully we honor ourselves while loving others. They remind us that love is not possession, that boundaries are not barriers, and that leaving can sometimes be the most courageous, most compassionate act of all. Even when they are gone, their presence lingers, not as a shadow to haunt us, but as a light to guide us. They show us what it means to feel deeply, to give without expectation, and to impact lives in ways that words alone cannot capture. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: the people who walk away while staying in our minds leave us with the opportunity to grow, to reflect, and to understand the true value of connection, empathy, and self-respect. So, Whether you find yourself the super empath or the avoidant in this story, remember this: every connection matters, every feeling is valid, and every choice to love consciously, even from a distance, is a mark of courage and wisdom. Carry that awareness with you into every relationship, every interaction, and every moment of your life. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for allowing yourself to journey through this story with me today. I am deeply grateful for your presence, your attention, and your openness. May you leave here inspired to love deeply, to respect your own heart, and to honorable, or the echoes of those who have touched your life in ways that matter most. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I wish you courage, clarity, and connection in every step you take. Goodbye, and may your own journey be filled with empathy, strength, and meaningful presence.